Deep in the heart of Georgia lies a serene-looking reservoir, Lake Lanier. A place meant for recreation has instead gained a sinister reputation. Year after year, it claims lives, ignites fear, and whispers of supernatural forces grow louder. Today, we'll uncover the truth behind the curse of Lake Lanier. A tale of sunken towns, restless spirits, and one dark secret that will leave you questioning what lies beneath. The origins of Lake Lanier. The year was 1956, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had a mission to create a reservoir that would serve Georgia's growing population. The project required flooding entire communities, forcing thousands of families to leave their homes. They packed up their lives, leaving behind churches, schools, and cemeteries, which were submerged under millions of gallons of water. But the lake was not built on empty land. It covered a history of violence and unrest. Decades earlier, the land had belonged to a thriving black community known as Oscarville, wiped out during a wave of racial violence in the early 20th century. Locals whispered that the spirits of those who had suffered never left, and when the waters rose, their anger only grew stronger. The lake was completed, but with it came a series of tragedies. Boating accidents, unexplained drownings, and sightings of ghostly figures began almost immediately. Locals dubbed it cursed, but officials brushed off the stories as superstition. Yet, those who dared to dive into the depths of Lake Lanier told a different story. The missing swimmers. Emily Carter tightened her scarf as the cool October wind blew across her face. She stood on the shore of Lake Lanier, staring at the calm, deceptively serene waters. 2 weeks ago, a young couple, Lily and Jason, had gone for a midnight swim. Their bodies were found days later, tangled in the roots of a sunken tree. The autopsy revealed no signs of foul play, yet the locals insisted otherwise. They saw her. An elderly man at the marina had told Emily earlier that day. The lady of the lake. She doesn't let anyone go once she gets her hands on them. Emily dismissed the story as folklore, but the more she dug, the stranger the case became. Witnesses claimed to see a pale woman in white standing on the shore the night the couple disappeared. The details were eerily similar to other accounts stretching back decades. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily decided to stay in the area for the next few weeks. The Lady of the Lake. Local legend spoke of a woman named Susanna, who drowned in the lake in the 1950s. She had been driving across the bridge when her car skidded off the edge, plunging into the icy waters below. Her body was never recovered, but people swore they saw her walking along the shore in a flowing white dress, searching for something or someone. Emily interviewed an old fisherman, Hank, who claimed to have seen Susanna years ago. "It was a foggy morning," Hank said, his voice trembling. "I was out on the water, and there she was, standing on the surface like it was solid ground. She turned and looked at me, and I swear, those eyes, they weren't human." The hidden town beneath. Intrigued by the stories, Emily hired a diver named Mark to take her below the surface of the lake. Armed with waterproof cameras, they descended into the murky depths. At first, all Emily could see was mud and scattered debris. But as they ventured deeper, the outline of a building emerged. A church, perfectly preserved. Its steeple reached upward, as if yearning to break free from the watery grave. Mark tapped her shoulder and pointed toward the church door. Inside, they saw pews still standing in rows, though covered in silt. A faint sound echoed in Emily's ears, like a distant bell. When they resurfaced, Mark was shaking. "I've dived all over the world," he said. "But this isn't normal. Something's down there, and it doesn't want us here." Whispers from the deep. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The eerie bell sound from the submerged church echoed in her mind. She replayed the footage from their dive, pausing at the church door. In one frame, She noticed something she hadn't seen underwater. A faint figure standing at the altar, its form distorted but unmistakably human. Determined to learn more, she visited the local historical society the next morning. The curator, an elderly woman named Margaret, seemed hesitant when Emily mentioned the lake. "The church you saw belonged to a small town called Oscarville," Margaret explained, her voice tinged with sadness. "It was a thriving community until it wasn't." Margaret shared the dark history of Oscarville, how its residents were driven out in the 1920s during a violent racial purge. Homes were burned, families displaced, and many were killed. The land, steeped in blood and suffering, had been left abandoned for years until the government claimed it for the lake project. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you think the tragedies are connected to the lake?" she asked. Margaret hesitated, then leaned closer. "Some say the spirits of those wronged have never found peace, and some of us believe the church bell still rings to remind the living of what was lost." Chapter 5. The Survivors' Stories. As Emily delved deeper, she sought out individuals who had survived close calls on the lake. One of them was a middle-aged man named Daniel, who had nearly drowned during a fishing trip years ago. "I was out there alone," Daniel recalled, his hands trembling as he held his coffee cup. "The water was calm, no wind, nothing. Then, all of a sudden, my boat tipped over like something pulled it from below." He paused, his eyes darting around the room as if reliving the moment. "I felt hands, cold, clammy hands, dragging me down. I fought with everything I had. When I finally broke the surface, there was no one around. But I swear, something, wanted me dead." Another survivor, a teenage girl named Sophia, described hearing voices while swimming with friends. "They were faint at first," she said, "like whispers. But then they got louder, screaming my name. I freaked out and swam back to shore, but my friends thought I was imagining it." Chapter 6. A Warning Ignored. Emily returned to Margaret with the survivors' accounts. The curator's face darkened. "Lake Lanier isn't just cursed," Margaret said. "It's alive, and it feeds on fear." Margaret begged Emily to abandon her investigation, warning her that the lake didn't like being disturbed. But Emily was undeterred. "If there's something to be uncovered, people deserve to know," she insisted. Margaret reluctantly handed her a journal, a collection of entries from residents who had lived in Oscarville before the lake's creation. The final entry was from a man named Elijah, who had been the church's pastor. It read, "They come for our land, our homes, and our bodies, but they will never take our souls. We curse this ground, and those who disturb it will suffer as we have suffered." Emily felt a cold dread settle over her, but she brushed it aside. Chapter 7. The Sunken Graveyard. With Mark's help, Emily arranged for another dive, this time near the location where an old cemetery was rumored to have been submerged. As they descended, the visibility worsened. The water grew darker, colder, and heavier, pressing against them like an unseen force. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted, revealing rows of headstones. Most were tilted or broken, but a few stood eerily upright, as if untouched by time. Emily felt her heart race as she saw the names on the stones. Entire families who had lived and died in Oscarville. One stone, larger than the rest, bore the name Elijah Carter. As she moved closer, her oxygen mask fogged up, and a shadow passed in front of her. She froze, her eyes scanning the murky water. A hand, a ghostly, pale hand, reached out from the silt and grazed her arm. She screamed into her regulator, her breath quickening as she signaled to Mark to ascend. When they broke the surface, Emily gasped for air, her hands trembling. Mark looked at her, his face pale. "We're done," he said firmly. "Whatever's down there, it doesn't want us here." The artifact. Emily's footage revealed something shocking. Near the graveyard, partially buried in the silt, was a small, ornate box. The carvings on its surface resembled symbols she had seen in Elijah's journal. Determined to retrieve the artifact, Emily contacted a team of expert divers. They returned to the lake with specialized equipment and successfully recovered the box. Inside, they found a piece of parchment, brittle with age, inscribed with a prayer, one that called for vengeance upon those who desecrated sacred land. The entity awakens. From the moment the box was removed from the lake, strange things began to happen. Emily experienced vivid nightmares of drowning, shadowy figures standing at the foot of her bed, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Margaret, too, reported disturbances at the Historical Society. Objects moved on their own, and the faint sound of the church bell rang through the halls. Emily realized that by uncovering the artifact, she had unleashed something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The final descent. Emily decided to return the artifact to the lake, hoping to restore balance. She and Mark made one final dive, placing the box back among the graves. As they ascended, the waters grew eerily calm, and the faint sound of the bell echoed one last time. Emily felt a strange sense of peace, but it was short-lived. The twist. Weeks later, Emily began noticing subtle changes in herself. Her reflection in the mirror seemed distorted. Her shadow moved independently, and she heard whispers in the night. The curse hadn't been broken. It had transferred to her. As she sat at her desk, editing her final report, she saw a figure in white standing at the edge of her yard. The Lady of the Lake had followed her home. Lake Lanier remains a place of beauty, tragedy, and mystery. While its waters may appear calm, they hold secrets that may never be fully understood. Some say the curse is real, others believe it's folklore. But one thing is certain, Lake Lanier leaves its mark on all who dare to disturb it. Thank you for watching Values of the Past. Stay curious and stay safe.
Thank you for watching this episode from The Lures of the Past. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and intrigue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our next tale from the past goes live.